Hi, folks. My name is Rachel Fleming. I am the OER, Open Education Resource Librarian, here at Irvine Valley College. This is a recording of the Flex Week presentation that I gave in August, specifically on OER project planning while you're teaching. So what I'm going to talk about, we grieved a little bit about the summer being over. We'll talk about recognizing that we're all racing to do prep work, looking at OER options, planning versus building while you teach, pros and cons, how-to basics, and I did a Q&A at the end. This is a summary recording at the end that's just a little bit more streamlined for anyone who would like to watch and get this content after the fact. So we grieved about the loss that summer is over, and this is often a continuing saga when it comes to OER. We race to figure out how to find the resources the couple weeks before a class begins. We have bookstore headaches. Textbook costs continue to be a huge burden and a barrier to our students. And the reality is OER is a great solution, and often we're looking into these options right as class is starting or the couple weeks leading up to it. And this is an ongoing narrative. So here's the reality. Textbook costs are a compounding barrier to student success, transfer, and comprehensive learning. And OER is a data-driven, effective, high-impact solution. Now, I know here at IVC, a lot of y'all really love data. So this time I added in a couple data slides. Don't usually spend that much time on data, but the reality is I'm a librarian. I can dive into literature review matrices with you. We can go as deep as you want into the data. So here's some data for you. As of right now, textbook costs are still a hidden barrier. Community colleges students will pay more for textbooks than their four-year student counterparts. 65% of students will try to pass without ever taking or buying the textbook in any way. Now, some of those students will try to come and get it from a library, some won't. But the reality is that over 50% of your students are trying to do the class without ever actually buying the textbook. Textbook costs are also a deciding factor when it comes to whether students will enroll. So if you've ever heard of faculty say, oh, well, my students don't have any problem buying the textbook, you do not know how many students looked at your course or your honors course and said, you know what, that textbook is way too much. I can't take this course or I can't be part of this program because those textbooks are too expensive. It's called a no response bias. We know that students who don't have to pay for textbooks are more likely to finish a transferable degree in 2 years, that the costs hit marginalized students the hardest, and there's 40 years worth of data on this. When something is required, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is accessible. We are dealing with the reality of this world right now, which is that a lot of students are dealing with food insecurity, unhoused elements, gas prices, and data shows that students use the saved funds from textbook costs that they would have spent on, often on food, gas, and housing. Inequitable access is really what we're talking about here, and that all students are not set up for success. One of the most beautiful things that OER does that I hear regularly from faculty is every student starts the first day of class with resources in hand, starting with the same resources ready to go. So the reality is OER is a proven effective equity solution. It closes achievement gaps and it creates basically instant access. It has been proven to close achievement gaps, has equitable access to learning. And here's the things we hear the most. Students actually read it, which means they actually learn it. It's linked to higher retention, better comprehension, and more engagement. And it's not that the resources are higher quality, it's just that the students actually have access to it, often in multiple modalities, and they're actually just more likely to read it, and therefore they are more likely to have more comprehension and engage in the content because they actually read it. We have found that this benefits first generation, low income, and BIPOC students exponentially. It is really truly equity in action, and we really do now have the data to prove this. If you would like, ask me about a literature review matrix I have on ZTC Impact, and I'll send you over 40 years worth of longitudinal, qualitative, case studies, quantitative, mixed method results. We've got it all. And I'm happy to send those to you if you'd like. So here's the other thing I hear all the time. Oh, Rachel, what about the publishers? Publishers are fine. It's an extremely predatory industry. It's $1 billion industry. It took a dip during COVID, but basically it is at almost $4 billion as an industry. It's super sketch, very predatory. They're doing fine. I wish that OER was making publishers quake in their boots, but we're not yet. Maybe someday. So here's the truth that I want all of the faculty at IVC to know. It requires time and expertise. There's no way around this. To curate, customize, author, build IVC localized specific OER derivatives, which is what we're going for, requires time and subject expertise. When you do that, we often end up with something that can be adopted widely within our community. But the initial build, the initial lift can be quite heavy. We do have some money within the OER committee where we can pay you for your time and expertise. Often some people will say it's pennies on the dollar, depending on what you're talking about. We have a tiered stipend model, and we are trying to get as many ZTC sections taught as possible. So feel free to reach out to the OER committee and ask us how you can get paid to build OER. So if you're here, or if you're listening to this recording, you're considering it. Thank you for that. So let's talk about your options and workflows. So really what this comes down to is how do you work best? There's no one right way to do OER. If someone tries to say it's this way or the highway, that is someone who really has their own set mindset. And that's really not what OER is about. OER is about a growth mindset. And for that, we are really talking about a lot of different styles of building, and we're all different. So, first and foremost, when we talk about how to do this work, you have to know yourself and how you work. So this is really a to perm or not to perm situation. And I was feeling a little snarky when I made this slide. But basically, if you go to perm your hair, once it's permed, and there's no going back. So you have two main different paths here. It's kind of a choose your own adventure. You can plan while you teach, which means you're using commercial textbook, you're using whatever you're currently using. You're just planning, you're strategizing. And then during a break, summer, winter, or spring, you're actually going to do the actual heavy lifting of the build. Other people, they want to build while they teach. And there's pros and cons to both, and I'm going to go through them. If you're going to do a plan while you teach, this is low risk. It's got long-term implementation. If you ever say things like, don't pressure me, I need time to marinate on this, let me dip my toe and get back to you. I'm going to do my own thing in my own time. Maybe I only want to adopt one chapter the first semester or just the first, week of class. You're a slow and steady kind of person. It does require more second round editing because basically what you're going to do is you're going to plan for it while you're building, take notes, and I'm going to go through the actual process of that. And then during the break, you'll actually build it. It does require, once you implement it, you're going to have to do more second round editing, but it's a much easier way for you to control the timeline. Building while you teach is similar to perming your hair. It's high risk. It's immediate implementation, and the reality is it's not going to be as pretty. If you ever say things like, oh, I do my best work under pressure, the more stressful, the better I produce. If you're someone who says, hey, give me that competitive vibe, I like that kind of intensity. If you're someone who likes to be dumped into the deep end of the pool, you like the trial by fire with looming deadlines, this is going to be the path for you. It's less iterations, less editing, because basically you are building as you teach, getting user feedback in real time. This requires you to schedule in recurring curriculum builds into your schedule every week, or you're going to be in big trouble. I wouldn't do this way unless you are an experienced teacher and you have some existing materials that you can use. And basically, it becomes like your alpha and beta testing with targeted builds. It's going to be a little less pretty. You're going to have more scaffolding, less of the pretty aesthetics, and you will still hit on all the curriculum elements, but it's going to be a little bit more of an iterative process. So when people say, well, Rachel, what's the right way to go about this? We are all these things in different contexts. So if you ask me about my work life, I'm a planner. I am a to-do list person. I have checklists and I have Kanban boards and I'm a project manager with spreadsheets. I'm definitely a planner. I take detailed notes. I want to strategize things. I want to roll things out in a waterfall method. If you ask me about my home life, I'm a little bit more of a chaos coordinator. If you ask me to go on a hike 3 weeks in advance, I don't know if I'm going to be in the mood to go on a hike. If you call me up that morning and say, hey, Rachel, do you want to go on a hike in 2 hours? I'm your girl. I like that kind of chaos coordinator. I like that kind of chaos in motion, flexibility and adapting. Under pressure, I do really well in elements outside of my work. Now, when it comes to, say, for instance, when I chair the OER committee, it's required that I am an ebb and flow surfer because sometimes you're waiting on things outside your control, right? Sometimes you're going to have those huge ups and downs, and there's nothing you can do but go with the flow and be that ebb and flow planner. Ideally, we are all of these things in different contexts. I need you to look within yourself and say, okay, as far as building a textbook goes, as far as building an OER textbook or course, what does that look like for you? Because I found some people, if you are a planner in your home life, say you have a whole bunch of kids and you're a really detailed planner in your home life, maybe your curriculum planning tends to be a little bit more of the chaos coordinator style. If you are an ebb and flow planner, maybe you can do a combo of the two. So if you're like, Rachel, I still am like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I built this little LibGuide for you here. You can go and just look at which one do you think you are? What are the things that speak to you? Because that's the workflow that you need to really adopt at this. And again, there is no one right or wrong way. As my grandma would have said, six half dozen, right? You pick which one is a good fit for you. So when we're talking about planning options, we really are talking about some project management terms. And there's different strategies that people take. The first one is called waterfall. This is very predictive. Each phase is complete before the next one begins. Okay. You are finishing up something entirely. You're doing the planning before you decide to do any building at all, before you do any aggregation at all. Then you have agile. Think of this like someone running down the field with a football, and people are trying to take the football away from them. It's lean, it's flexible, it's iterative. You might have some short cycles, but you're dodging and weaving. Okay. This is related to scrums and sprints. This is where mainly you have fast moments and slow. Maybe it's part of that ebb and flow, where sometimes you're going to have nothing done and then you're going to really book it to get a whole bunch done. Personally, I'm a huge fan of this next one, critical path or critical chain. This is where it really depends on the task. And I'm going to give you an example of this one. When you are baking a cake, there are certain things you can do in tandem and certain things you cannot do until the first thing is complete. You cannot frost a cake until it's baked and cooled. Okay. You cannot bake a cake while the eggs haven't been cracked. So those things have to be done in order. You have to get all the ingredients out and crack the eggs and mix everything together, bake it, let it cool before you can frost it. All those things have to be done sequentially. However, you can preheat the oven at the same time that you're mixing the ingredients. Okay. You can be cleaning up all your ingredients at the same time that the cake is cooling. Those are things that can be done in tandem. The whole point of this is that you're looking for what tasks can be done at the same time and what tasks can only be completed one after the other. An example of this in OER is accessibility. Try to build an accessibility as you go. When you throw in a new image, throw in the alt text right then and there so you don't have to go back and do it at a different time. That would be doing things at the same time that you can, right? You can't really do peer editing on something until it's finished. Otherwise, you're a co-author of that book. So some things can be done in tandem, some things have to be done sequentially. Another thing that we see regularly in project management is rolling wave. And this is where the things that are coming up really soon, you're going to have details on. But the things that are a little farther out in that wave, maybe we'll get to that when we get to it. Okay. And that works fine if you're planning, but if you're doing a build as you teach, the rolling wave is going to be a little bit harder. But again, if you're doing that kind of agile scrum, all of these can be intermixed. But these are just some different ways that you're planning in your head. So now we're going to really focus on one of the two methods. Say you want to plan while you teach, and then you're going to build during a break. You're going to keep using whatever paid textbooks or paid novels or paid memoirs you're using. You are going to use your class basically as the outline for OER. And you're going to start basically notes and an outline, maybe a table of contents if you're building a document. Each week, you're going to outline what your future OER is going to have based on what you're doing in your class. Maybe you collect some OER materials when you have some downtime in that rolling wave phase, right? Maybe you reach out to me and say, hey, Rachel, what would I need in order to do this? And we start pulling some OER materials that you could throw into your notes as links. You take notes on what you would need and what you would want, but you're not actually building yet. Then you build an outline. You really start gathering your resources. Maybe you do this during a Christmas break. Maybe during a break, all you're doing is making an outline and then starting to actually aggregate those different sources you're going to use. And that is one of your builds. Okay. Or maybe you do this all in huge scrums and sprints where basically you gather it all in one day and then the next day you actually start building over a break. But the whole thing is that the class ends. And then during one of these breaks, that's when you're turning those notes and outlines into a final product. Now, in comparison, if you're a maniac, if you are one of those people that is like, hey, Rachel, I love the pressure. I love the intensity. That's when I do my best work because literally half y'all are like this. Okay. I am not personally, usually, but a lot of y'all are like this. You have an outline and a game plan, but you're going to be flexible. You're going to be agile. You're going to have a general idea of what you're doing, and you're going to have some resources that you can already use. Maybe you already have a course that a lot of it you've already built, or you're using a CVC OEI open course. So you already have some content that you're using, and you're going to build out 1 to 3 chapters, whatever your original first couple modules are, 1 to 3 modules. Those are going to be pretty built out. And then from there, you're going to tell your students, hey, don't read too far ahead. We're building as we go. Maybe you even ask your students like, hey, I'll give you extra credit if you can find typos in things, like, hey, if you find a good Creative Commons image or you want to share an image under a Creative Commons license with me, give me that image. You're basically using your students as live feedback loops, and you just have to stay 1 or 2 weeks ahead. You have to schedule in time to make sure you stay on target with this. You're building out just a couple weeks in advance. You can't really get that sick. You can't have any huge emergencies happen because basically you were building as you go. And we got to do a little bit of expectation mitigation here. It's going to be kind of bare bones. No matter how hard you go at it, there's going to be weeks that basically you hit on the content, but you could do better. And that's what second round editing is for. So this is a much more flexible, adaptable sprint, scrum type builds. So if you say, Rachel, how much can I actually get paid to do this? You've talked about money a couple times. The OER committee does have some stipends that you can go through. We're doing a pre-approval process right now. You'll be able to fill out a form, and then we could basically encumber money for you. So the number one thing you can do is a patchworked course. Now, this is at $1,500 because it basically means you're pulling from a whole bunch of different links, public domain, the library. You're building out a ZTC course using a whole bunch of different things. You're linking out and you're basically pulling out the commercial text content, replacing it with anything that's OER. This is what y'all did mainly the first 2 years before I was onboarded from 2022 to 2024. It is a highly effective model. It's pretty quick to basically be able to link out this way. It means that basically all those links are going to have to be checked every single time that you go to teach this course because links sometimes die. So it makes for something that is a little bit harder to maintain because you're going to have to check all those links in the long run, but the initial build isn't as hard. Secondly, we have a standalone textbook. The initial build for this can be quite heavy. You can remix from other content. Sometimes even just planning and trying to remix and find all that stuff can be very, very labor intensive. The long goal is that we have a standalone, targeted, localized IVC textbook that anyone in the department can use or make their own derivative from. Those are $5,000 per standalone Creative Commons textbook. Okay, and this can be in a Word document or a PDF, or it can be in LibreText. We recommend LibreText because their accessibility is awesome, creates a final different modalities that people can download it in their devices. On a computer, you can download it directly into Canvas, or you can download it as a PDF, and there's lots of print options, and their accessibility is great. You can also do, say, a Google folder. Basically, you want to have everything, all ancillaries needed to teach the class, but you want to put it all in basically a Google Drive, and we're going to upload that to assets folders on OER databases. You could do that. That's an option as well, and that's the same as a patchworked course. All right. So those are your options right now. Again, feel free to reach out to the OER committee to talk about whether or not you'd qualify. So when we talk about what are your actual things you're going to do, when you visualize yourself doing this, visualization is part of planning. Number one, you're assessing. Two, you're matching to OER resources. Three, you're aggregating content. Then you're actually building and editing. And then finally, you're going to refine and start making second editions because the reality is all OER is iterative. So when you're doing this, the number one thing when you're doing an assessment or a needs assessment, you're going to look at your course and you're going to say, how much of this is commercial text? So if you're using a Pearson book and a homework system, your kids could be paying upwards of $350 just for your class. You need an OER textbook and you need the free Adapt homework system. If you're like, I have a beloved textbook, but everything else is mine, you just need the textbook or a patchwork course, either way. If you say, you know what, I don't use a textbook or a homework system, I just have a novel or this memoir that I require them to read, but it can't be made OER. We do have a lot of public domain novels. That's a possibility. We have a lot of public domain content that you could make into readers. So there are other elements related to that that we could talk about. Okay. Then you have to ask yourself, do you like the flow of your current course? If you like the flow, great, we're not going to touch it. We're going to leave your course just as it is, and we're basically going to pull out anything that's a commercial text, and we're going to replace it with OER content. We can use OER databases to start finding that content. And this is where me as your full-time OER librarian, I can help you match and find this content. We start matching, and we find it, and we search by key terms, because we all know that we call our different courses different things across the state. So you can use me to help you find those resources. There is also a LibGuide with a lot of tutorials, asynchronous help, and there is an IVC Canvas course that will be up and running hopefully within the next year. So when people say, Rachel, remixing, what do you mean by that? This is where you're taking a lot of different kinds of OER content, and it does require you as a subject expert to curate it and, go through and assess it, and we mix it together into a new localized IVC derivative. And people say, well, Rachel, isn't that plagiarism? No, because it's all under a Creative Commons license. It's not plagiarism. I need you to think of all OER like it's raw clay. It's base text that then you will be able to edit and update and customize as the subject expert to meet the needs of your students. All right, it's all editable. So what you're really doing is matching, okay? You're literally just pulling it out and you're matching it to OER content. If you can find a base book like an OpenStax book or a LibreText book that's already up and going, that's going to be your best bet and the easiest way to streamline your workflow. Think of it this way, okay? We're just literally swapping out. We are not in any way trying to make you do extra work or like encourage you to, make something completely crazy and new. We're just swapping stuff out. So I have heard a couple things. These are things that I've actually had faculty say here to me. Thank you for saying them directly to me and not whispering them behind my back. They've been whispered to me. Things like, I suffered so much, they should too. School should be a sacrifice. Paying something gives them a vested interest. They need to pay something to care. My class has been good so far. Why would I put in the extra work to change it? I'm really busy. I teach overload. I don't have time. It doesn't make that big a difference anyway. These are all things that have been said directly to me by IVC faculty. I'd like to address just a couple of them. I won't go through every single point here. But when you say I'm too busy, it doesn't make that big of a difference. The reality is I understand faculty overload is real. Y'all are super busy. We're living under late stage capitalism, polarized politics. There's a lot going on in the world. Y'all have your own lives. I get that. This does lead to something called latent saliency. Textbook costs hit students after registration is already hit, often when it's too late to adopt, and it's extremely stressful for students. This is also related to something called hyperbolic discounting, where students and faculty, we undervalue the long-term impact for the short-term effort. And I'm happy to talk to you more about these terms. First day access for students is actually a really big deal and really makes a difference in whether or not they're going to be successful. No cost for students means more students are able to buy things like gas, food, housing, and take more classes. And data shows that OER really does make a huge difference in student success and student transfer. When people say, oh, well, my class is fine, why should I change it? Really, we're talking about good teaching truly evolves. And OER lets you curate things for your subject expertise so that you can basically have a legacy. What are you leaving behind you? What are you doing to exercise your academic freedom as a subject expert? And then they need to pay something to care. I hear this one all the time. This is actually a fallacy. Uh, it's no book, no buy-in, right? So students really, engagement comes from using the materials, not from buying the materials. And when people say, I suffer, so they should too, I see this a lot in different narratives. Suffering isn't a rite of passage anymore. It's often just creating barriers. And there's so many other things in the world that our students are suffering with. We don't need to add an additional suffering or barrier to that under this narrative of a rite of passage. So I have one more data slide for y'all. ZTC students in the community college system in California, we've saved about 5.6 million for students per term. And OER raises success rates from 73% from 70%, and it specifically boosts underserved marginalized communities. They actually have proven higher success rates in marginalized communities. And what we really see is that in different case studies, College of the Canyons has seen greater success rates in marginalized populations. Pasadena saw greater grades and retention. Saddleback saw fewer cancellations of classes. And there's no more bookstore headaches. And then OER now have a lot of print options and different modalities, so you're not having to worry about it just being digital content because it's not just digital anymore. And then this last one, 82% of students feel that they do better with a free textbook in their class. Now, people will say, well, Rachel, that's just how they feel they do. But we all know that how a student perceives and believes they are going to do in a class, the better they will do. If they honestly believe that they are going to be more successful with this free textbook, then that actually has a lot to do with whether or not they actually will be or not. So I just need to ask yourself, what would you need to make your course CTC? Know yourself, what kind of planning works best for you as a subject expert, and then ask the OER committee about stipends because there are stipends that we can offer you. So there's lots of questions that you're welcome to reach out to me. My email is rfleming@ivc.edu. And this was a summary of the PD that I did for the Flex Week Fall 2025 for IVC.